Well, hello everyone. I'm your host, Richard Allinger, and I'm glad to see you're back. And before I get into the actual content of the program today with regard to church history, I failed last week to refer to the Jeremiah Study Bible, and the reason they call this study Bible the Jeremiah Study Bible is because Dr. David Jeremiah, who is a graduate of the Dallas Theological Seminary in Dallas, Texas, and he's also a pastor teacher in San Diego, at his church in San Diego, his church home. And many of you probably have listened to some of Dr. Jeremiah's programs on teaching the Word and the messages from the Bible on satellite Christian Signal, TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network, or TCT, Total Christian Television, or the Church Channel. And then here you've got this study Bible, and it's the New King James Version. And it's new and life-changing, and what it says, what it means, and what it means for you. And what I wanted to do, I'm not going to read the chapter 2 where Elijah ascended to heaven in 2 Kings, and they say that Jeremiah most likely recorded the words of 2 Kings chapter 2. And this is where Elisha performs many miracles. After Elijah was taken, Elisha then performed many miracles. And one of them was the healing of water in the ancient city of Jericho. The only thing I want to do before I get into the program is just to go back and read what the Jeremiah Study Bible says with regard to Elijah ascending to heaven and Elisha performing miracles after Elijah was taken. And the study note says, with regard to 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, Gilgal, Bethel, and Jericho were like modern-day Bible colleges or seminaries for prophets in training. 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 5 and verse 15, the younger men received instruction in Scripture under more experienced prophets. There were schools of prophets or sons of prophets that were in school at Gilgal and Bethel. And this note says, in Gilgal, Bethel, and Jericho were like modern-day Bible colleges or seminaries for prophets in training. The younger men received instruction in Scripture under more experienced prophets. And then the study note for chapter 2, verses 2 through 6 here in 2 Kings chapter 2, in the Jeremiah Study Bible, faithfulness and loyalty to Elijah were essential traits for Elijah's successor. Some suggest Elisha was disobedient in not staying, but Elijah was testing Elisha. He passed. When Elijah tested him a third time, Elisha still refused to put his own comfort first. And then the study note, chapter 2, verse 5 here in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 5 says, take away uses the same Hebrew verb that describes Enoch's entrance into heaven. In Genesis chapter 5 verse 24, Enoch walked with God and was not. He was taken away, and by the same token here, Elijah was taken away and caught up. And then the study note for chapter 2, verse 9 says, a man's principal heir received a double portion of his material goods. Elisha requested a double portion of Elijah's spirit. the energizing power characterizing Elijah's ministry. And Elisha wanted God's empowerment for more than wealth. And I need to read that again there. A man's principal heir received a double portion of his material goods. Elisha requested a double portion of Elijah's spirit and energizing power characterizing Elijah's ministry. Elisha wanted God's empowerment for more than wealth. A study note for chapter 2, verses 11 and 12, the chariot and horses of fire were likely an angel squadron on special assignment. Elisha's exclamation speaks to the reason God commanded Israel's kings not to stockpile horses. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 16, or fear armies with chariots. Deuteronomy 20, verse 1. Every powerful resource is found in God, who fights for his people. Psalms 104, verse 4. And then the study note for chapter 2, verse 13, Elijah had placed his prophetic mantle, likely some sort of shawl or cloak, on Elisha as Israel's next prophet. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 19. Now Elisha demonstrated his acceptance of the call. Chapter 2, verse 14. Performing the same miracle as Elijah in chapter 2, verse 8 of 2 Kings 2, verse 8, demonstrates that Elisha had received a double portion of his mentor's spirit. Chapter 2, verse 9. This put him in the tradition of Moses and Joshua, who respectively parted the Red Sea in Exodus chapter 14, verses 21 through 22, and the Jordan River in Joshua chapter 3, verses 9 through 17. Like Joshua, Yahweh saves. See, Joshua means Yahweh saves. Elisha would live up to the meaning of his name, which means God saves. Joshua means Yahweh saves, and Elisha means God saves. And then the study note for chapter 2, verse 15 here in 2 Kings, out of the Jeremiah Study Bible says, when the sons of the prophets saw Elisha, they sensed the spirit of Elijah on him. God always provided a prophetic voice to guide his people, sending John the Baptist in Luke chapter 1, verse 17, Jesus and the Holy Spirit, who empowered the apostles and all who followed them. And then the study note in chapter 2, 2 Kings here, verses 19 through 22 says that Elisha healed or purified this salty water, manifested God's unique power operating through him. And you can see that in the 4th chapter of 2 Kings here, verse 41, and also in Exodus chapter 15, verses 25 and 26. And then the study note for verses 23 and 24 in chapter 2 here of 2 Kings, according to the Jeremiah Study Bible, says, these youth were young men, not children, and possibly false prophets of Baal. Go up implies Elisha should go into heaven as Elijah had. Bald head might allude to the outcast lepers of that day or to Elisha's actual head, whether bald by heredity or shaven by choice. But more likely it was a derisive comment. And he wants, Dr. Jeremiah refers you to Isaiah chapter 3, verse 17 through 24, with regard to these derisive comments on God's anointed prophet. Their contempt reflected disrespect for the Lord. And such manner of disrespect is also witnessed in Deuteronomy chapter 27, verses 13 through 16. Now, as you know, March is Women's History Month, and this is the recent Concerned Pastors for Social Action Courier, hot off the press, and I see a very nice, handsome photo of Foss Avenue Missionary Baptist Church pastor Dr. Reginald Flynn. He replaced the late and highly esteemed Dr. Avery Aldridge a few years back. And I know that when the former President Bill Clinton was here in Flint, that he had touched bases with Dr. Avery Aldridge back in the election of 1992 at Foss Avenue, like Hillary Clinton touched bases with Pastor Kenneth Stewart out to House of Prayer Missionary Baptist Church on Carpenter Road about 3 weeks ago. And the following week, just before the snow emergency happened here in Flint, Reverend Miller, who was the late Reverend Arthur J. Pointer's replacement, Reverend Miller had invited Reverend Jesse Jackson here too at the Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church down on Industrial Myrtle Street, and there they conducted and were leaders of, along with Dr. Fuller of Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, and Reverend Wallace Hill of Mount Pisgah Missionary Baptist Church, led a march from the Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church up to the Flint water plant. This is a picture here of the Flint water plant, which is on Stewart Avenue at the I-475 exit across the street from McDonald's. And in addition to all that has been unfolding here with regard to the contaminated water and lead poisoning in Flint, on this issue, for hot off the press today, says that the Flint mayor, Dr. Karen Weaver, has issued a state of emergency for the city regarding the levels of lead poisoning in the drinking water, which may have an effect on domesticated animals. The Michigan State University Extension has, on Monday, December 14th, Flint Mayor Dr. Karen Weaver issued a state of emergency regarding the levels of lead in the city's water. While the concerns regarding human health are first and foremost, some pet owners are also concerned about their animals and the levels of lead to which they may have been exposed by drinking the same contaminated water. Michigan State University Extension advises that if you are concerned about your animal's exposure to lead, please contact your veterinarian to have your animals examined. Based on clinical signs and physical examinations, the veterinarian can recommend appropriate diagnostic testing or other types of examination to determine if your animal is at risk. Veterinarians can contact the Diagnostic Center for Population and Animal Health at MSU for more information on available testing and sample results. Animals, just like people, can absorb lead in their bodies through various environmental factors. And even before this came out 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had a beautiful flowering plant with white blossoms in my living room. It was just purchased from a local flower shop, and I thought that I could water my plants with contaminated water, that it wouldn't matter. But using tap water, before the filters were put on by the state and FEMA intervention, I took some water out of the tap and watered my plant with it, and it was inside of a week. All the beautiful white blossoms had all got like a rotten color and just shriveled up and died. You know, so I think plants are affected by lead too. They can absorb in their chemistry lead, just like animals can absorb it and humans can absorb it. And this issue is of such a magnitude. It not only has, because it is thought that now, because that this water issue in Flint has brought the nation's president of the NAACP on the front page. They're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Courier, and this was, the February 21st edition, Volume 4, Number 8, celebrating, February is Black History. But it says right here, the national president of the NAACP and the Concerned Pastors for Social Action threatened a sit-in at the state capitol by Floyd Fuller. And he said the concerned pastors, now I don't know if many of you people here that might not be Flint local, Floyd Fuller is the pastor of the Mount Tabor Missionary Baptist Church down on Welch Boulevard, next to the Concerned Pastors for Social Action Courier office. And the Concerned Pastors for Social Action has Pastor Floyd Fuller writes, and the Flint branch of the NAACP, President Francis Gilchrist, and the national NAACP President and CEO, Attorney Cornell William Brooks, held a press conference on Monday, February 15th, 2016 at Christ Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church to address the water crisis in Flint. Now, for you older people in Flint, you know, the senior citizens, that Christ Fellowship back in the 60s and 1970 was the old Congregation Beth Israel Jewish synagogue. And when they built their new building out on Diane Calkins Road around 1970, that's when Reverend Robbs came down from Canaan Missionary Baptist Church and became the pastor of Christ Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. This article here says that this is where the president, Brooks of the National NAACP, and also Francis Gilchrist, the Flint's NAAC chapter president, had a rally. And Pastor Alfred Harris is also the president of the Concerned Pastors for Social Action, stated that they were meeting to address the water issue in an effort to make it go away. President Gilchrist, Francis Gilchrist, well, when we talk about Francis, I've got to stop because March is Women's Month, where we celebrate women, and we're so happy for all of the women as men of God, because women were denigrated and marginalized in most of Western civilization history. As you know, before World War I, in this country, women couldn't even vote. But now we have a woman mayor, Dr. Karen Weaver, in Flint for the first time, and it looks like Hillary Clinton, just visiting Flint upon Pastor Kenneth Stewart invitation, is a candidate for the Democratic National Convention's presidential election coming up in November of this year. So, and as you know, I've always said in my programs that the first person that Jesus appeared to when he was resurrected from the dead was a woman, when he said, "All power has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go and tell." So he was commissioning a woman to go and tell the others, that's the 12 other ones that he had chosen, that he was risen from the dead. With regard to that, I want to say we celebrate with you, women of the world, that we thank God for women. And as you know, the God of the Bible, he has always used women in his great redemptive work and plan for the ages. Because even like through Virgin Mary came baby Jesus, the Savior of the world, our hope. So I want to say again to you, all of you women, we celebrate you this month, and I'm so glad to see that President Francis Gilchrist and Dr. Karen Weaver and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton are stepping up to the plate with regard to defending the community and this lead poisoning problem. It says that President Francis Gilchrist greeted the audience and thanks those who were from all over the state for coming to help them address what she calls a civil rights issue. Now, the NAACP, because Flint is 70% African American, has been perpetrated upon in this class action suit that brings the NAACP president here for his support, because they say that this water issue would have never been perpetrated upon a community like West Bloomfield Hills or Grosse Pointe. And the demographic factor that Flint is 70% African American, they see this now has a civil rights infraction. And now people in the media in Flint, University of Michigan staff and students, concerned pastors and citizens are all now getting on the train, buses, planes, and even in their automobiles to go, heading now, all minds are toward Washington, D.C., because this class action suit with regard to the Flint polluted water problem is now going to be in Congress for a congressional hearing starting Monday, which would be March, I think March 19th. And so, with everybody heading toward Washington, we have it's really a blessing to know that the National NAACP president Cornell W. Brooks says he was in Flint a few weeks ago, and at that time he said he made a modest promise. I promised that this visit would not be a one-off episode occurrence, a pass-by or a drive-by occasion, that this would be an ongoing, deep-seated, heartfelt, genuine leadership commitment. And it was because of the leadership when I got here that is present in this room at the rally there at Christ Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church up there in Hamilton Avenue and North Saginaw Street, room in this sanctuary, in this pulpit, people who are living their values and they not speaking their values. That's why I'm here today, and that's why I'm back, is because of you. When speaking about the concerned pastors and Pastor Harris, their president, President Brooks of the NAACP said, it's one thing to preach in a pulpit, but it's another thing to show up in the community. And it is one thing to serve the people and visit the hospitals, but it's another thing to be in the community to make sure the people don't reach the hospitals. He thanked the ministers for what they are doing in the community. And as you know, the local churches in Flint have been saturated with cases of purified bottled water, and these are stations now where everybody in the community can go to their local churches for assistance, and also fire stations in local neighborhoods. The purpose of this press conference is twofold. We are here to stand at the side of the citizenry of Flint, Michigan. We are here to stand beside the children who were poisoned through no fault of their own. We are here to stand at the side of mothers and fathers, mamas and daddies, grandmamas and grandfathers, uncles and aunties, stepmothers and stepfathers, who have charge and care of their children, and who yet feel in their hearts that somebody failed them. We are here to stand at the side of this community at the point of a global civil rights crisis and an environmental crisis in our midst. And also, on the front page of this article in the Concerned Pastors for Social Action Courier, it says that March 12th, the Flint branch of the NAACP Annual Freedom Fund Benefit Dinner will be held Saturday, March 12th. So Monday is March 13th. That's when everybody's, as soon as they get done going to the benefit dinner, they're heading for Washington, D.C., plane, boat, and train. I heard that one little boy even may try to get there on his roller skates from Chicago. But they're going to try to get down there because there's the congressional hearing on Flint's water problem starts March 13th on Monday. So in the closing minute of this session, before we break for station identification with FACT, Flint Area Community Television, Channel 17, Comcast Cable, I just wanted to announce that the Flint Branch NAACP Annual Freedom Fund Benefit Dinner will be held Saturday, March 12, 2016 at the Riverfront Banquet Center, the Riverfront Plaza, Flint, Michigan. And the theme is maximizing the power of voting. Your vote matters. I hope that you come back so I can continue with the church history content.
Nine 978 Flint's newest radio station, located right here in Flint, Michigan, the Good News Radio. If you're interested in getting involved, having your own show, or just supporting the station, give us a call at 259-9789. That's 259-9789. It's our voices, located right here in Flint, Michigan, the Good News Radio. If you're interested in getting involved, having your own show, or just supporting the station, give us a call at 259-9789.
Well, hello everybody. I'm glad you're back. And before I get into our lessons of church history, I just wanted to finish up the article on the front page of the Concerned Pastors for Social Action with regard to the water issue here in Flint. On the front page of this newspaper, it says, nationally renowned black-owned law firm joins local retired judge in class action lawsuit against the city of Flint. And that is the retired Valdemar Washington. His colleagues in law call him Val. And you've got attorney William H. or Billy Murphy. And there's a very nice photo here I don't know if you can see that, of Judge Baltimore Washington retired and Billy Murphy. And this article tells you they've come to rescue the people of Flint and their expertise of law. It says, this is written by Judge Baltimore Washington retired. On Sunday, January 31st, 2016, retired Flint Circuit Judge Valdemar Val Washington filed a 12-count, 41-page federal class action lawsuit against former emergency manager Darnell Early, former emergency manager Gerald Ambrose, former Mayor Dane Walling, the City of Flint, the State of Michigan Governor Richard Dale Snyder, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and Michigan Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of Beatrice Bowler, a married Flint mother of 2 children, Pastor Edwin Anderson, Mrs. Aline Anderson, married Flint homeowner, and EPCO Sales LLC, a Flint small business. The named plaintiffs, Bowler, Anderson, and EPCO, are suing the defendants on behalf of themselves and all other similar situated persons, which means all customers of the Flint Water and Sewer Department who have suffered harm from the City of Flint using Flint River water as a source of drinking water, a number estimated to be 31,000 households. This type of case is commonly known as a class action suit. On Monday, February 1st, 2016, now this will be the law firm down there in the congressional investigations everybody's going to as soon as the NAACP banquet fundraiser is over this weekend. Everybody's heading down to Washington, the hearing. On Monday, February 1st, 2016, the nationally renowned black-owned law firm Murphy, Falcon Murphy, PA, joined Washington has additional counsel for plaintiffs. Murphy, Falcon, and Murphy, PA, is a Baltimore-based law firm specializing in complex civil and criminal litigation. Their team of seasoned trial lawyers have significant experience working with a variety of corporate and individual clients across the country and takes pride in exceptional success rates that dwarf the national average. Their attorneys have represented some of the largest corporations in a series of high-profile, high-stakes cases in some of the toughest jurisdictions around the country and have obtained hundreds of millions of dollars in verdicts and settlements at trials. You can learn more at their website, Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-R, Falcon, Falcon.com. That's the law firm if you want to learn more, who will be representing the people here in the hearings. The reason that the lawsuit was filed was to hold those people accountable who caused the water crisis in Flint, Michigan by having them pay money damages to the citizens of Flint for the harms that have been done to them. In addition to the money damages being sought, the lawsuit also is asking the court to award punitive damages to punish the defendants for their wrongful misconduct and to issue temporary and permanent orders that prevent the defendants from ever being able to hurt Flint again. It's a class action suit. Now, I'm going to... now, that's the Concerned Pastor's social action take on this event that's happened here in Flint, and that has put Flint, Michigan in the national tabloids, and even on the internet worldwide. They've heard of this problem in Flint. This right here is another take. Instead of the Concerned Pastors for Social Action, as you can see, this says the political and social roots of the Flint water crisis, and you have a picture of the Flint water plant. I myself, being a biological science major out of University of Michigan Flint, had to, in organic and inorganic chemistry classes and laboratories, go to the Flint water plant. I've been inside there and toured it. They have, like, you know what swimming pools look like at a college, like a swimming pool or at Olympics or something? Well, they have about, it looks like about 12 of those big swimming pools full of water in the water treatment plant, plus this big tank outside. This is what Reverend Jesse Jackson and all the people in the march saw when they marched from Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church to the water plant there at I-475 and Stewart Avenue, across the street from McDonald's. And now, this is on the University of Michigan, Flint, downtown Flint. And as some of the students and staff are part of the World Socialist website. And what they're saying is, their take on this is, I'm just going to share this with you so you can get your own mind about you with regard to what is going on here. Over the past several months, now many of these staff and students are heading for Washington for the congressional hearings next week. So this is what they have said. Now, Thursday, March 10th, is tomorrow at 7 p.m. They're having, at the University of Michigan, Flint campus, at the Murchie Science Building, room 109, there's a rally there on 415 East Kersley Street. And you've got the World Socialist website people, the Socialist Equality Party, and the International Youth of Students for Social Equality. And they're just saying their take on this is over the past several months, the poisoning of the population of Flint has burst onto the national and international scene. That's what I was just saying. After ignoring and covering up the crisis for 2 years, Democrat and Republican politicians are now scrambling to point fingers at each other to obscure their joint responsibility for a monumental crime. Congress is holding sham investigations, and candidates for president have rushed to exploit the tragedy to boost their political fortunes. With volumes of incriminating emails demonstrating his guilt, Republican Governor Snyder is claiming that he failed to connect the dots. Democrats, for their part, are seeking to lay sole responsibility at the feet of the Republicans, covering up the role of Flint's mayor and city council, the Democratic emergency manager, and the Environmental Protection Agency under the Obama administration. Race is being injected into the discussion in order to obscure the fact that workers of all races and ethnicities in Flint and throughout the country face a common enemy in the corporations and the rich. So maybe this is going to, Flint it's become an international concern because many cities in the world may be soon having the same issue. After being forced to acknowledge the crisis only due to the determined resistance of the working class of Flint, the big business politicians of both parties, along with the media, hope to quickly dispense with the issue and get back to business as usual. Workers need the truth, not lies and evasions. This meeting, called by the Socialist Equality Party and the International Youth and Students for Social Equality, will begin a detailed examination of the real causes of the Flint water crisis and who is responsible. It will explain the relationship of the crisis in Flint and the policy of the deindustrialization, the deregulation, and privatization carried out by both big business parties. It will trace the connection between the lead water poisoning and the socio-economic system, capitalism, and subordinates the most elemental needs of the population to profit interests of corporations and banks. So, they're giving you a view from a socialistic viewpoint instead of a capitalistic viewpoint. And if you're interested, again, the political and social roots of the Flint water crisis is a meeting Thursday, March 10th at 7 p.m. in the Murchie Science Building at the Flint U of M campus. Now, before I get into the changing face, all of these different events that are transpiring is causing the changing face of religion. And I'm a graduate of the University of Michigan here in Flint, and I had to take a class in Western Civilization, and this is the textbook here. The author is Edward McNall Burns on Western Civilization, and I'm going to read a little bit of this, but before I do, what caught my attention was on this Concerned Pastor for Social Action, they have a really nice picture of the late former president of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I really liked what the concerned pastors wrote under this article, LBJ's legacy under assault. LBJ's legacy under assault. And it's just a few words, and I want to give you their take on LBJ's legacy under assault. This is by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He had been here in Flint, Michigan, leading that march down to the water plant from Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church less than 2 weeks ago. And this is what he has said. 50 years later, former President Lyndon Johnson got the tribute he more than earned. 4 presidents praised his contribution: the Great Society, the War on Poverty, Civil Rights Act, and Voting Rights Act opened doors that had been locked. I lived out the promise of LBJ's efforts, said President Obama, rejecting the cynicism of those who would dismantle Medicare and food stamps. Signature LBJ achievements. Bill Clinton praised LBJ for demonstrating the power of the presidency to redeem the promises of America. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with liberty and justice for all. Live on, LBJ, with your legacy. The power of the presidency to redeem the promise of America. We are striving toward a more perfect union. And if time permitted, I would get this old Christian hymn book out and read to you the words, the battle hymn of the Republic, of which the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King recited at the big civil rights rally at the time of LBJ's presidency and the Kennedys. If you remember back in the 60s, glory, hallelujah, his truth is marching on. These are right out of the pages of the Christian hymnals and the battle hymn of the Republic. This is LBJ's legacy, and it's under assault. Reverend Jesse Jackson goes on to say, getting our history right is vital. That's why I wanted to give you a socialist take on the issue and a capitalist take on the issue. And here, Reverend Jesse Jackson just goes on to reiterate what I've been trying to get the viewing audience to see, that getting our history right is vital. For decades, LBJ's achievements have been slighted. Liberals scorned him because of the war in Vietnam and finally drove him to not seek re-election. Conservatives loathed him because of the civil rights achievements, with Republicans moving to displace Democrats as the party of the South. The war on poverty, which dramatically reduced poverty in America, was dismissed as a failure. Has the anger of the cities exploded? New Democrats dismissed him for believing in big government as they tacked to a conservative era. As you know, after LBJ, Hubert Humphrey could not beat Richard Nixon, if you remember in that election of 1968. In fact, as the Civil Rights Summit at LBJ Library in Austin, Texas, recognized last week, Johnson was a giant, standing with Franklin Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln as presidents who saved America. Under Johnson, the scourge of segregation was finally ended, and equal protection under the law moved from a lie to a promise fulfilled. Live on, LBJ, and your legacy of a more perfect union. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Live on, LBJ, with your legacy. Millions were lifted from poverty as the poor were provided a ladder up out of despair. Johnson's reforms, civil rights, voting rights, immigration, Medicare, child nutrition, food stamps, and more were nearly as great as those of FDR and never matched since. Live on, LBJ, and your legacy of striving for a more perfect union. Johnson was propelled by a massive movement for civil rights. Live on, LBJ, and your legacy, striving for a more perfect union. As Americans moved at the courage and dignity of ordinary heroes, willing to stand up or sit down, protest or march, suffer abuse in jail for their rights. I hear it now in Selma, Alabama. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep down in my heart, I know we shall overcome someday. Live on, LBJ, and your legacy, striving toward a more perfect union. And Martin Luther King Jr., the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, knowing that one day America would rise up and live out its dream, that we hold these truths, and glory, hallelujah. God has allowed me to go up the mountaintop and look on over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. I have a dream. These are his words the night before that assassination in 1968. Yes, Bobby Kennedy was killed too that year. Has LBJ moved into the presidency because John Kennedy had been assassinated. And so, looking at the LBJ legacy here, I just had to share with you Jesse Jackson's words, because he needs to be celebrated and his legacy needs to live on. Dr. Martin Luther King, in the wake of the assassination of JFK, he had a legacy that he could invoke, but his leadership, passion, energy, and skill were indispensable. President Obama invoked one of LBJ's famed lines, "What the hell is the presidency for if not to fight for causes you believe in? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." Justice, justice, the Hebrew prophet cried out, "Seek justice." Acknowledging Johnson's greatness in our rearview mirror is important, in part because it may help our vision looking forward through the windshield. Today, America is more unequal than ever. Our schools are segregated by race and by class, separate and unequal. We rank second to the lowest among industrialized nations in assistance we provide to the poor. In LBJ's time, we enjoyed a broad middle class. For many, there were good jobs and good benefits. Now the middle class is sinking, but not in despair. President Obama's administration generated 14 million more jobs and extended health care to 17 million more Americans. We will not despair. We will not despair. And the dream will live on. Assassin bullets will not stop these words and will not stop the dream. The legacy and dream lives on. Now the middle class is sinking. We suffer mass unemployment with the jobs that are being created too often low pay and part-time. The millennial generation is graduating into the worst economic straits since the Great Depression. And you know that is what President Obama has been talking with us about now for 8 years, and Hillary Clinton now has picked up the leadership mantle, it seems, and ringing the same bells with us. And now I want you to know that when you read a history from a secular university like University of Michigan on the changing face of religion, it's not going to be the same kind of account, historical narrative, has that out of a Bible college or a theological seminary book Christianity through the centuries. So this changing face of religion, I'm going to read from two texts, one secular university and one theological university, because I want you to discern the difference, just like you discerned the socialist take on the water problem here in Flint and the capitalistic take on the water issue here in Flint. Now, listen to this. As time permits, I want to read from this University of Michigan history book, The Changing Face of Religion. In the 20th century, religion seemed the most solidly entrenched of institutions. Scarcely anyone appeared to challenge its authority or to question its rights to prescribe public and private morality and what should be taught in the schools. As late as 1925, a teacher in Tennessee was convicted and sentenced to a $100 fine for teaching the theory of evolution to his high school class in biology. Although he won an appeal 2 years later, the law was not overturned until 1967. Bible reading and public prayers were not only universal requirements in Western schools, but courses in religion were quite often mandatory, even in non-denominational colleges and universities. In the United States, the typical college president was Doctor of Divinity. He might also be a professor of philosophy in the larger institutions or of something called Christian evidences in the smaller ones. For the most part, religion followed a straight and narrow path until well into the 20th century. To be sure, as we have seen, factional movements sprang up in both the Catholic and Protestant churches. Each had its modernist revolt, fostered by the growth of science, and the new emphasis on that subject has the key to human welfare. Dissension mounted within the economic system involving conflicts. Like, for instance, in the world today, we've got communism, fascism, Sharia finance, capitalism, socialism. There's a lot of isms, and you have to be discerning and connect all the dots and make sense out of nonsense. That's the purpose of one of my programs here, is to help you, especially young people, you millennials, all of those young people that have been born since the year 2000. I hope you're watching, because I'm just like you. You know, I want you to be able to make sense out of a lot of nonsense you probably see, and you probably have questions and wonder, well, why is everything like it is? This program will help you as you give yourself to the study of it. Dissension mounted within the economic system involving welfare. Each had its modernist revolt, fostered by the growth of science, and the new emphasis on that subject has the key to human welfare. In other words, all you millennials that have been born since the year 2000, you have mobile devices, just do a Google search on socialism. You'll know what it is. Do a Google search on capitalism.